All right, in this video, I'm gonna go through the Fitech EFI install on a 540 big block. A lot of things you're gonna learn in this video will probably apply to a small block or big block V8s. Just here's some tips and tricks that I kind of learned while doing the install. One of the big things I learned right off the bat, right here, is the fuel line. So I ended up with a banjo fitting right here, and then you have a 90-degree elbow, and then you go to your fuel, your input. What's important about this is that the way Fitech designed their inputs and their returns, they're really, really high on the unit itself. So what happens is if you have a standard straight fitting coming out, or even a standard 90 like this one, where it has to come out and then make that bend, it's really hard to get the air cleaner to fit on. So here's the air cleaner that I'm using. So this is a drop-based style, right? But what happens is, I'm gonna go ahead and put it on there. You see how that banjo fitting clears? It's kind of hard to see in this little video. But with a standard 90-degree fitting, this actually would not fit. I would have to space it up another inch before I can get it to clear. And then, as we all know, as we start spacing things upwards, what happens? Right there, there's me learning the hard way. You start hitting the inside of the hood. So that is one of the big things I learned right off the bat. Something else that's interesting as well is on the Fitech systems, you have three choices for inputs. You have here, here, or back here, and then there's a dedicated return line, which you'll see they kind of mark return right there. In my case, I wanted to kind of keep it simple, so I only ran a single line, which is okay. But why is it okay? Because right here, I have a fuel pressure regulator right here. So I have in from the tank through the regulator, and then this is my return line here, and then I have a single line going up to my Fitech unit. Right? It's also important to note that the Fitech unit does require 58 PSI. So your regulator, you have to make sure that you can regulate at least at 58 or higher, because Fitech does have an internal regulator in here. So if you're feeding 60 or 65, it will regulate it to what it needs. So I thought it was cleaner running the single line. So that's what I did there. Some other things to note is there's very minimal connections required to hook it up. So you have a coolant temp sensor. In this case, in most people's intakes, you do have an extra spot. Here's for the gauge that's inside the car. And then some people ask me, they're like, well, if you want to run electric fans as well, I'll give credit to Wizard Cooling on this one. They sent me let's see if I can make sure I get it. They sent me a radiator with an additional sensor bung right below there, right below the inlet. So what's nice about that is I have an additional sensor here, right? So that right there will be the one that triggers the electric fans. All right, now that we have the coolant temp sensor figured out, let's kind of jump into some of the other sensors that are included in this kit. So running counted down here, so we have the coolant temp sensor and then some additional wiring back in. You see, you have a lot of connections here. Let me show you. I actually have an extra harness over here, and I'll show you everything that you have to wire into the vehicle. It's not very complicated. So you have these harnesses. This does come with the kit, and you'll see just on the other end, it's just a lot of extra wires to kind of reach where you need to go. So really clearly labeled, right? Battery, we all know what that means, 12 volt always. And then this one can activate a fuel pump, right? And then going over here, there's a 4-pin connector in here. Same thing. You have just a lot of extra wire to kind of reach where you need to go. And they also label it, so key on, so this is going to be your standard ignition wire, the white one right there. As we kind of turn around, you'll see it does have fan control, right? So you can go inside the Fitech unit and trigger your fans. In my case, I'm just letting the sensor that came with the Wizard cooling unit trigger the fans. You have your TAC input, right? And then the black wire, pretty standard. This is AC in this case. So the black wire actually can be used for a lot of different things, and let me show you that right here. So on that black wire, these are the instructions that come with it, and you'll see this is an optional black wire, right? So this wire can trigger a lot of different things. So if you do hook it up, it can provide 2-step rev limiting, provides air fuel ratio correction for nitrous, or you can connect it if you have AC, so it'll help kick up the RPMs when when the AC is activated. So that's the optional black wire that you see that's part of this harness right here. In my case, I'm not actually using that wire for anything. But if we go back to the car, so once you go through the vehicle and you hook up a few of these wires that are not very complicated to find, they're all pretty straightforward. You'll see back here a couple extra harnesses. So this right here, this is, once again, these are hardwired into the unit themselves. You see they come out of the unit, and there's a harness here. This I also have an extra set of, so I'll show you what that harness is. Looks just like this. So these two plug into the Fitech unit itself, and then these are the two that you're going to run into the vehicle, and this will actually go to the handheld controller. So both of these will be plugged into the controller. And then the last main one that is hardwired off the back of the unit, which is right over here. Now this is going to run down to your O2 sensor. So you hook your O2 sensor in. It does come with a bolt-on bung, so you can just go ahead and you drill a hole, you put the bung on, and you do it with a couple of clamps, or you can get a bung welded into place. But that one's very simple. You just take this, you run it down to the bung, plug it right in. And then if I kind of jump into the actual controller itself, you'll see it's pretty straightforward. In this case, this is 69 Camaro, so I do not have a radio because I don't want to hear anything but that beautiful motor sing. So I have it hooked up right down here, and you'll see those two connectors, right? So those go straight to the unit, so you can do all your programming from here. Now, first impressions on this during fire up, there's about 6 steps you go when you first install the unit. It asks a couple of basic questions like cylinders, cubic inches, target idle RPM, max RPM, and you just plug a few of those in and the unit fired right up. I mean, instantly. And then I just let it idle and get to temp. Obviously, you gotta go back, make sure, check for fuel leaks, right? So you wanna make sure that you don't have any drips or leaks anywhere from any of your connectors. But it did get up to operating temp. Once you do start driving, it will self-learn, so it will get better and better. Now I'll show the throttle cable connection. Very similar to a carburetor, right? So you have your mount here, right? And then you have your cable coming through. Now what's interesting about this unit is the spring tension that's already built in this unit is pretty strong. So you'll see, I'm actually not even using a return spring because this unit will snap back on its own. Additionally, I mean, most of our carburetor guys were used to kind of mounting to this position right here with the throttle cable. I opted to use this higher one so that the gas pedal wasn't that hard to press. So you'll see a lot of companies that make this, they make a little fitting that kind of goes right in here, so you can just kind of pop your throttle cable on right there. And that gives you really, really good pedal feel, and you'll see this unit snaps back on its own. So that's what I did for that. So that's pretty much it. That's the Fitech unit. A lot of people kind of question, like, you know, how does it hold up? How does it do on the highway? I've driven a lot of miles on this. It does great on the highway. You would never know that you had such a large motor under the hood because it really just kind of purrs down the highway. This unit itself, this is the Mean Street 800, so this does support 800 horsepower. This is the 8 injector unit, so you might not be able to see in there, but you see there's a lot of injector connections. There's 4 on this side, there's 4 on the other, so this provides plenty of fuel for this big motor. So that's it. That's some of the tips and tricks that I use. Thanks for watching.